These are the 0.3b notes for PreCalc. We're today going to be solving absolute value equations. So let's talk about first what absolute values are. Absolute value is just the distance a number is from 0. So how far a number is from 0. So let's say you had positive 3, and we're trying to get over to 0. You would go 1, 2, 3 steps. So we say the absolute value of 3 is 3. However, if you're coming from the opposite direction, negative 3, it still requires 1, 2, 3 steps to get over to 0. So we say the absolute value of negative 3 is also 3. That's why you've probably heard that the absolute value is always positive. All right, so because of that, in order to set up these equations, what we need to do is we need to write one as a positive and one as a negative. So it'll look like this. 2 equations. You set 1 equal to the positive number and 1 equal to the negative number. So for example, number 1, you would have 5x equals 30 and 5x equals negative 30, a positive and a negative version. And from there, you would just solve. Okay, for the next example, example 2, same type of thing. You're going to set 1 equal to the positive 21 and the other one equal to negative 21. Notice that you're not changing any signs of what's inside the absolute value, just the number after the equal sign. And we solve. And solve the other one the same way. For example 3, we want to make sure that we get the absolute value bars by itself. So let's make a little note. Get absolute value bars by itself. So notice we want to get rid of the 2. So I'll start by dividing both sides by 2. Right now, if they're right next to each other, it means multiplication. So we'll do the opposite by dividing. And then at that point, we can set both of these equal to 1 positive and 1 negative. Again, notice I'm not changing this negative 3. I'm still leaving it as a negative 3. And then just divide. All right. So you notice sometimes we do get the same answers, but with opposite signs, like we did on example 1 and example 3. But sometimes we don't, like on example 2. Sometimes the numbers are completely different. For example 4, we need to move the 10. This 10 is different than the 2 on example 3 because it's being added or subtracted. I see this minus sign right there. So what I'm going to need to do is get rid of the 10 by moving it to the other side by subtracting 10. I'm subtracting 10 because the 10 is a positive right now. Still have the negative. And then just a tip, make sure when you're writing your absolute value bars, you either make them large or maybe you even make them a little bit darker. You just want to make sure that you don't think that absolute value bar is a 1. I'll squeeze a little 1 in there because I want to divide by negative 1. Now it's time to set both right two equations. One equals positive, one equals negative. Take a moment and try that. All right, your two equations should look like that. And then you just solve by subtracting 4. On the back side, we have something just a little bit different. Notice for example 5 and 6, there is an x on both sides of the equal sign. We start the problem the same, setting it up, setting 1 equal to the positive version, positive 4x, and 1 equal to the negative version, so negative 4x. And we'll solve this problem like we normally do. I'm going to get my x's on the same side, so I'm going to subtract 2x. Then I'll divide by 2. Same steps for the other equation. Oops. And here we'll divide by negative 6. At this point, it is very important that you must check your answers. So if you have an x on both sides, must check answers by plugging into, and this is important, the original equation. Has to be the original equation. What I mean by that, this right here. Have to plug it back in there. We'll check each one of these individually. So let's see what happens when we plug in a negative 3. Absolute value bars, 2 times negative 3 minus 6, close the absolute value bars, equals 4 times negative 3. Two times negative 3, negative 6. 4 times negative 3, negative 12. Combine negative 6 and negative 6 to make negative 12. Bring down the negative 12 on the right. And remember, the absolute value is going to be a positive because it is the distance from 0. So just like on our very first number line that we did, the absolute value of negative 3 was 3. The absolute value of negative 12 is going to be a positive 12. But I still have the negative 12 on the right. Positive 12 is not equal to negative 12, so I'm going to write not true. And then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to X out this answer. That is what we call an extraneous solution. It does not work. We still need to check the other one though. So again, back to the original equation. Right here is where I'm checking. The absolute value of negative 4, absolute value is always turned to positive, so 4 equals 4. That is true, which means our solution is x equals 1. Example 6 would be a great one to try on your own if you just want to pause the video here. Give it a shot. and then you can turn it back on. I'm going to go through this one pretty quickly, assuming that you paused your video and tried it. There's a lot of negatives on this problem, so please make sure you're being careful with them. Perhaps as you have this problem done, you double checked it and you missed one of your negatives, so now you're correcting and making sure that you have everything correct. So your answers should be -4 and -1. But we must check it. Trust me, if you didn't have to check it, I wouldn't make you check it. I know it's a little bit annoying to check, but a lot of times on these problems, the answers just don't end up being correct. We're going to check it back into here. Check in the original problem. All right, 5 times -4 plus 8. We're going to see if that equals 3 times -4. Just doing a little bit of simplifying here. Take the absolute value of that. I get 12 equals -12. And again, that is not true. So I'll toss out that answer. The absolute value of +3 is +3, and that's equal to -3. No, it is not. Again, another answer of not true. So I throw out that answer. If I end up throwing out both answers, technically I have no solution. In Delta Math, you're just going to leave the answer box blank. And then you just hit submit. So a little note for you as you're starting to work on your delta. If there's no solution, if you threw out both of them, you just leave the answer space completely blank, hit submit, and it's like, cool, got it. All right, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. I'd love to help.